President of the United States clearly has influential military responsibilities and powers. Article 2 of the Constitution, which spells out many of the things for the presidency, declares that the president is commander in chief of the Army and the Navy. So the president is sort of the commander in chief of the United States military forces. With that comes great power and responsibility. Many presidents have used this military power and pushed it about as far as they can. Because remember, the president controls the military, but it's Congress's job or duty to actually give a formal declaration of war. President's not supposed to be able to go to war without Congress's approval, despite the fact the president is commander in chief of the military. However, you might be surprised to see that if you look at this chart, that has all of the major military conflicts the United States has ever been involved in, the ones in the red boxes are wars in which Congress actually gave its major formal declaration of war. And the blue ones are actions in which the president took the country into some sort of military conflict without a formal declaration of war. So oftentimes Congress gets frustrated because as commander in chief, the president will use his military power without getting a formal declaration of war. So one of the things that Congress did after the Vietnam War, which was an undeclared war. Congress never declared that war, but the president took us into that conflict anyway, was to pass what was called the War Powers Act in 1973, or sometimes you'll see it as the War Powers Resolution. The purpose, the intention of this law was for Congress to sort of like limit the ability of the president to go into long military conflicts without getting congressional approval. It's meant to limit the ability of the president to take us into war. So again, it's passed by Congress in response to the Vietnam War. And what it established was that the president could engage in military action without getting congressional approval. Sometimes the president has to make a quick decision, and for him to always have to get congressional approval wouldn't be realistic. But the president has 48 hours, essentially 2 days, after he uses military force to sort of like let Congress know what he did and why he did it. If it's a one-time thing, fine. But if it's meant to be happening over and over again, like troops can only remain in combat, or combat can only continue to happen for an additional 60 days without Congress's approval, and like another 30-day built in for like removal purposes, like bring people back home. So what this law was intending to do was saying that at most, without congressional approval, a president could only for 90 days engage in military conflict without getting a formal declaration of war from Congress. So the purpose of the War Powers Act was to give the president still some needed flexibility, but the major intention was to limit long-term, year-long wars or longer without getting congressional approval for a declaration of war.